Thank you, Ian. Good morning. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship, aka Buff. My name is Grace Nyblade. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the coordinator of today's service. If you're new to Buff and want to get to know us better, there are Buff-colored cards in the pews that can be submitted during offertory or at the main office so that we can include you in communications. If you're up for joining us for coffee hour and food, we encourage you to grab a red mug. That's the best signal for us extroverts to come find you and talk about our community. We're beginning to implement rainbow ribbons on name tags for folks who are part of Uplift and comfortable talking about the queer presence and activities at Buff. In case that wasn't enough ways of welcome, please join us today for our monthly potluck. We would like to get to know you better. There is always plenty of food. And for those of you on Zoom, we encourage you to take the opportunity to hang out after the service and socialize. Our crew will turn all of the mics back on and give you a chance to interact. For those of you who knew long-term member Miriam Bedell, who passed on September 29th, we've lit a candle and put a harmonica up here to remind us of her special light. She is so missed, especially among those of us planning this service. Her advocacy and precious voice on behalf of queer folks in our community is missed deeply. Stay tuned for announcements about a gathering in her memory. Community night dinners will continue to be on hiatus this week and return the following week on October 29th. We encourage people who are up for a once-a-month commitment to help cook or chop vegetables, to find Jennifer Villanova or Reverend Sunny to volunteer.
Hello, I'm Lucy Kesterson, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm going to read a creation myth, which is part of the Tagalog Filipino canon. It was not written down until the 16th century, but the story likely goes back hundreds of more years, if not further than that. The gods who are part of this story continue to be celebrated, not just for the ways they affect the universe and help all beings, but as an inspiration for the committed love they share. The most benevolent of all the deities was the beautiful goddess Lakapati. She existed before the creation of the world. She was the goddess of prosperity and harvest, always known for her giving nature. Like the cornstalks of the harvest, she was tall and slender, with her long, soft hair as satiny as the corn silk. She always stood upright, standing boldly and bravely for what she believed in, as Lakapati was also openly and proudly transgender. Lakapati's name was a core part of her identity. It meant giver of the world, a flashy but ultimately earned title for all that she gave. She wanted to make sure every being could be themselves and their best selves at that. It was through her love that she gave so much, and Lakapati had two loves. The earth was born through Lakapati's first love. Before the earth was formed, the gods resided in a field of the heavens where Lakapati met and fell in love with Bathala, an intersex transgender deity looking for their own place in the universe. The two lived together happily, though Bathala was always searching for their purpose and sometimes grew envious that Lakapati's compassion gave her something on which to focus. Bathala decided it was time to find something they could be passionate about too. Lakapati loved to explore the fields of the heavens, as she was goddess of the harvest. On one expedition, she found a unique and exquisite banana plant. Lakapati had the idea to combine it with some clay and give it to Bathala so that they could create something with it. Bathala loved the gifts and started to experiment, eventually transforming the banana plant and the clay into mountains, oceans, and land. Thus, Bathala created the earth, and so Bathala became known as the creator of all things, taking their earned place as the god of all gods. Their new role and responsibilities became Bathala's priority, and with Lakapati focused on her own cultivation, the couple decided to end their time together and go their separate ways. Lakapati continued to explore in the fields of the gods, finding new ways to bring prosperity to all beings on the newly formed earth. While traveling through the fields one day, she encountered Mapulon, god of the seasons and health. He also provided the rain and the warmth to the earth so that the land could flourish. He was stunning and widely known as the most beautiful of the gods. Mapulon confessed to Lakapati that he'd loved her from afar for some time, but never wanted to get between her and Bathala. With Bathala out of the picture, Mapulon and Lakapati could be together. They discovered that working together, they could make the land fertile for harvest. As the two worked more and more closely together, they became known as the providers for all beings. Lakapati and Mapulon also loved having their own fun. They danced through the fields of the gods, often in lavish costumes. Mapulon had always been known for wearing masks. With the changing of each season, Mapulon wore a different mask to represent the season. For Mapulon, the seasons represented balance, with summer's glow counteracting winter's frigidity, and spring creating harmony with fall. As Lakapati and Mapulon worked together to provide rain and bountiful harvest, they had to find balance just as the weather did. They knew that after a drought, a raging storm must come. Mapulon was in fact created as two aspects in one god. He's always felt that he'd had two selves, and regulating the seasons helped him understand how that was a strength. Lakapati had also long felt this way. She had broken boundaries to feel whole, fusing together many parts of herself. Lakapati and Mapulon became inseparable, perfectly balanced always. Just as the seasons provided what the land needed for harvest, their love provided each other with sustenance. Lakapati and Mapulon lived together, balancing the earth's ecosystem. Their balance provided the earth with resources, and their love provided it with beauty. The couple had a child together, Anagole, goddess of lost things. Anagole helped people find what they needed, just as her parents had found not only themselves, but each other.
Thank you, Lucy. In late May 2023, Everything is Possible One of our favorite hymns was published as a children's picture book by Noisy Crow, an independent publisher based in London. Reverend Fred Small and Northern Ireland-based illustrator Alison Brown did this to coincide with the song's 40th anniversary and Pride Month. Reverend Small made a few updates to his lyrics to be more gender inclusive, and those are in your order of service. Small, who is a straight, cisgendered man, had contemplated the changes for some time and made them after consulting with the trans and non-binary friends and colleagues. His hope for the book, he says, is the same hope I have for all the songs I have ever written, that they give people solace, a sense of solidarity, a sense of power, and a sense of possibility. Please join us in singing the new lyrics in your order of service. The music is hymn number 1019. And the words, the updated words are in your order of service. Wendy and Tom will help lead us, and rise if you are able, and join us. It's next. It's next. It's afterwards. Got it. Leftover saved, wash the dishes and put them away. I told you a story, tucked you behind at the end of another day. As the moon sets sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea. I will sing you a song.
Our chalice lighting today was written by Lee Kinvey. They live waiting for the next hilarious thing to happen. It always does. A true story. This chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get where they expected you to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting not by number, but by silence, by wild abandon, with a brush you made yourself from light deep inside. Startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you. Finally, a true story.
Please join me in reciting our covenant. Love is the spirit of our fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and we honor all creation. This is our covenant. Just in case you were looking for an explanation for ears, headbands, horses, pink, we're going to do some dancing.
Hi, I'm Wendy, she, her, and today for our children's moment, we're not going to read a book, we're going to dance. And we're going to dance to a song about a young woman who really loved to dance, but her mother didn't like the way she danced. But the young woman dancer said, "I'm just having fun. I'm going to keep on dancing." So, hit it, Jim.
Ian, do you think we can sing them up to their classroom? Mindful children's moment was not what it was expected. I think you're going to discover that a lot of this is not expected. I am so excited today to have Odessa join us and to hear about her journey. I have had the pleasure of getting to know Odessa over the last few years in doing queer advocacy and empowerment work here in Whatcom County. Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship has the distinction of being committed to recertifying as a welcoming congregation through the national process from the Unitarian Universalist Association. Members and friends have worked to elevate queer voices in worship, education, advocacy, within the Buff community and in Whatcom County. As part of that process, we have 5 steps. The core group of members and friends are committed to certifying welcoming congregation for this community every year. Of the 800 or so UU fellowships and churches, only 500 have completed this process once. Buff has the distinction of completing this process annually, every year, for the last several years. Our certification is current, and we're committed to continuing to recertify every year. So what that means is there's a core group of volunteers, and we go through 5 steps. The first one is paperwork. I know, surprised, right? Volunteers track and document for the UUA the steps that we're taking to continue to educate and empower. Number 2, welcoming worship services. Second practice is incorporating welcoming worship services in our ordinary calendar of worship every year. Maybe today? 3, welcoming days of observance. The third task is recognizing and celebrating welcoming days of observance. This is a little harder to define. The short answer is that we incorporate celebrations into the life of our congregation. Those celebrations that are important to the LGBTQ queer communities because they bring visibility, affirmation after generations of invisibility and erasure. And seems like an important time period to do that. These days, they remind us that all of who you are is sacred, and all of who you are is welcome. The fourth task in practice of welcome renewal is an annual opportunity for our congregation to host or execute some sort of educational experience for the congregation and the community. Last year, we hosted a series of seminars they called Trans Inclusion. One of the things that our committee took away from that was, even though the focus was on how we can be inclusive of our transgender members, it also was about being radically welcoming of a variety of different identities. Uplift will be finding a new education project for this year and also will represent the Trans Inclusion Seminar, probably under the name Radical Welcome, because we learned so much in the 6 seminars that we held. The 5th is supporting a welcoming project. And that means we are encouraged to give generously of our gifts and resources. This usually means identifying a local or national project to donate that serves our queer population. While this is not all that Uplift does at Buff every year, this is the core mission of our committee. If you wish to volunteer and be involved, please find me or Pam. Wave, Pam. Anytime. We love meeting new people, and we love hearing new voices. Today, it is my special treat to follow in the path that Reverend Barbara, Dr. Williams, and our new minister, Reverend Sunny, have led. I have no idea if I can match their eloquence. I am, however, going to try. At Buff, we hear the words welcoming congregation, beloved community, radical welcome. We recite our covenant, and we try to welcome new people in our midst. I've struggled to define the tasks of these big concepts and what I can embrace to work towards these big values. So I went to the library. I looked at the research. And I kept coming across a speech of Brene Brown's about belonging. Dr. Brown is a researcher in Texas who specializes in work on shame, belonging, trust, and other hard-to-define social concepts. She's published several books and has a large social media presence. While a psychologist doing research may seem like an odd place to start for a sermon, bear with me. I promise I can tie this all together. Her quote that has stuck with me all summer, as I've heard the values and seen the transition that Buff is going through, is a quote where she says, "The opposite of belonging is fitting in." I needed more than that. So I'm going to try to tie psychology and religion together. Let's see if I can do it. Old Testament first. Leviticus 19:34. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Exodus 23:9. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. All right, New Testament, there seems to be a theme. Matthew 25:35. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Strangers, foreigners, have a really different meaning today in the era of don't talk to strangers. I heard that message a lot. In Hebrew, the translation is arguable. I encourage you to reach for the translation of strangers to mean outsiders, new people, or friends you haven't gotten to know yet. Brené Brown distinguishes belonging from fitting in by defining belonging as being accepted for your authentic self, and fitting in is changing yourself to gain acceptance. True belonging requires authenticity and the courage to be yourself, even if it means standing alone. Our appearance, even if fitting in involves acclimating to a group by altering your behavior, speech, or appearance, which can lead to a sense of self-betrayal and ultimately isn't sustainable. So let me break it down into smaller pieces. Belonging. Being accepted for who you really are, truly, flaws and all. It is part of being something larger than yourself while also belonging to yourself and honoring who you are. It requires courage to be authentic, vulnerable, and imperfect. The outcome is a deep sense of safety, emotional support, and connection. It allows individuals to maintain their integrity and believe in themselves. Fitting in. Changing yourself to match groups' expectations. It involves assessing the situation and altering your behavior, speech, or appearance to be accepted. It requires compromising your values and beliefs to align with others. The outcome is feeling of acceptance, but not truly valued for who you are, and it can lead to a sense of self-betrayal and feeling lost. Belonging. Radical welcome, welcoming congregation, beloved community. Big words, big concepts, and values and tasks that we as a congregation are committing to. So what does that mean? I don't know about you, but I have clear memories of what it is to try to squeeze myself into a framework that someone else has defined and trying to fit in. Sometimes I was successful, but at the cost of pieces of me that were ignored and not welcomed. Today, we get to hear about Odessa's journey. I encourage you to reach for the commonalities to things that you have been through and places where you relate. Our greatest strength is in togetherness and our work towards belonging. Part of how we support our mission is by taking a weekly offering. Those of you joining us on Zoom will see a screen with instructions for how to contribute. As the ushers come forward, feel free to sing along with Ian, today's pianist. Ushers.
Hi, everyone. My name is Odessa, and I prefer she, her pronouns. Some of you met me in the trans inclusion class some months ago. I was in my barefooter era, which is still my preferred footgear, but less preferred as a name. Odessa does a good job of carrying the barefooter energy, right? Like, it's a feminine form of the name Odysseus, right? Odysseus carries the whole sense of journey. Hodos in Greek is the journey, right? And also, it's really interesting, you know, I haven't met a lot of Odessas, but there are a lot of places called Odessa. So I don't know quite exactly what it is about, like, we feminize the name of a journey to make a place, but like, something to meditate on, I guess. One of the key things that brought me down out of that more experimental kind of barefooter phase into what is, I suppose, a bit more normal of a trans feminine self-narration is that I realized that most people, when they meet me, they aren't interested in hearing about the 600 pages I had to write to kind of like wrap my head around my own experience about the nature of gender and gendered experience. They want to know how they can honor me in kind of like those everyday interactions. They don't want my dissertation, they want my pronouns. And that's always been a little bit more challenging for me. At the same time, my whole motivation in this journey has been to try to come to a place where I can speak honestly about this complex and strange experience. And this was, for most of my life, just a really deep internal struggle that I couldn't really ever put into words. I didn't feel like I'd ever even like mention it, keep it completely hidden, which, you know, is well summarized by being trans. And you know, so somebody tweeted the other day that like every trans woman has two genders. Number one is woman, and number two is something strange and mysterious that they can't quite put into words for fear of like invalidating either their own womanhood or that of other trans women, and so they don't talk about it. And you know, I don't like to say things like every trans woman or every autistic person, but like that is definitely true of me. It's very complex and strange, but I find when I am received and welcomed as a woman with this kind of strange experience, that that is honoring, and I appreciate that honor, and I don't presume it in any way. I'm grateful for this opportunity this morning to share with you from the text of my life as I continue to try to tell that story and learn to articulate it more effectively and efficiently. So I grew up in Colorado Springs, right there in the shadow of focused on the family in the days when Ted Haggard had a direct line to George W. Bush's White House, when C. Peter Wagner was there pioneering the techniques of strategic level spiritual warfare that would make this surprising leap from kind of like weird fringe religious fantasy to being like this major like political movement in the age of Trump. And in that context, it became this major part of my own spiritual journey to try to figure out why I wasn't an evangelical. I mean, I looked on paper at like the doctrine, and it seemed like there was a lot in common, you know, love for Jesus, a passion for the Bible, desire to share that with others. But I would go to their churches, and it just didn't feel right. In a lot of ways, that was like the burr under my saddle that took me to seminary and ultimately to write a PhD on spiritual imagination, how it developed in 8th century Jerusalem at the confluence of Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And it would have been probably easier if I had known how to use words like queer and trans and autistic to describe my experience. But that didn't come out for me until much later, in just the last few years. As I lived it, I mostly just kept finding that there were these unspoken norms that I didn't quite understand, much less live up to in evangelical spaces. And I didn't understand why. I continually tried to prove myself by mastery of biblical languages, acuity with doctrine, depth of devotion. And I found myself feeling constantly on the outside and not knowing quite how to manage that. I had a pretty diverse Christian upbringing, and it would not have been difficult for me to position myself in a more progressive, affirming, welcoming branch of Christianity, but I didn't want that. I wasn't ready to be affirmed. I wanted a religion that would help me understand and manage the deep shame I felt regarding my confusing internal experiences of gender and sexuality, the frustration I felt around being a perennial misfit. In my experience, religion didn't give me shame. It gave me a lens to understand the deep shame I already felt instinctively and a way to manage it. And I became a priest for a lot of reasons, and all of them in retrospect had some kind of weird relationship to this really complex interior sensibilities around gender, embodiment, shame. I recognize and acknowledge that a lot of queer people experience the Christian faith as oppressive and condemning, especially in the more traditionalist versions like the ones that I was a part of, as part of the conservative Anglican movement. But in my case, it ultimately proved liberating. After several years of serving in a church that I planted with this clear, consistent message that Jesus died for our sins, and it worked, I began to actually believe it. You see, I wasn't quite sure what was sinful about my experience. That sin line was always really fuzzy for me, but the depth of the shame that I felt told me there must be something sinful. But once I began to believe, and really believe at a heart level, not just like kind of as a cognitive thing, that those sins were really forgiven, I could begin to unpack that box. And to my surprise, what happened was more than just an internalization of this truth of being forgiven. What happened was that I discovered that in this secret garden of shame was the very place where Jesus would meet me and love me. And I began to read the scriptures differently. I discovered that the Bible does not point us back to the garden, to some immutable, pristine order where male and female are all that there is, and it's very, concrete and clear to everybody how that works. But to this forward vision of the kingdom where there is neither male nor female, where we are like angels, and those who can bear it become eunuchs for the kingdom in order to point the way. This made sense of my experience. What I felt in my body was a yearning for this new creation that is coming into being, that is already and not yet. What I had tried to hide, the birth pangs of a new order coming into being. It also made better sense of the tradition. Indeed, I still regard myself as a deeply traditional Christian. I've just come to the conclusion that some of the things that I had assumed to be traditional views, particularly around gender and sexuality, were in fact reactionary retrenchments of a fairly recent, fairly peculiar developments in the cultural history of Western Christendom, particularly in the English-speaking world, which unfortunately touches everybody in the world these days, but it is what it is. These were all exciting and liberating discoveries for me. And indeed, even though I wasn't speaking directly about this in the congregation that I had gathered, I figured this is kind of a controversial thing. And even if it weren't, it's still kind of a particular experience. So the way I approached it was kind of in the vague, thorn in the flesh kind of ways. I found that it was exciting to them as well, that this way of approaching the faith, this way of approaching the scriptures, to really be centered not on control, but on love and the promise of the reality of forgiveness, and the difficulty that we have believing that we are loved, that we are forgiven, and using the authority given me in the priest, not to set boundaries against people, but to confront directly those areas where there's the feeling of unlove, the feeling of unforgiveness, and leverage all the authority that I had to say, you are forgiven, you are loved. Tragically, however, not everyone was excited about what I was discovering as I was. My bishop told me I was self-absorbed. One friend suggested maybe it was demons. Another suggested that my ambiguity, this very ambiguity I was cultivating to prevent from having to go too deep with my gender stuff, with those who wouldn't get it, was causing harm. I was told to repent or resign. But given that I wasn't expressing anything in public, I wasn't sure what repentance would mean, how to do it, or how to prove I had done it. And probably even more importantly, I didn't want to. I experienced this as the fulfillment of my faith, after all, not its subversion. I had never felt closer to Jesus. And like Jesus, I found myself rejected and accused by the religious authorities. And it's strange to reflect, like everything that I was afraid would happen when I unpacked that box happened. I blew up my church, I blew up my family, and there's a deep grief and a tragedy that surrounds that. I don't quite know how to process, right? Like there's a lot of pain there, and I don't want to overlook that. But at the same time, the sense of alignment, the sense that like all that stuff that I couldn't quite put words to now has a name, now has flesh, right? There is something to that I can't ignore. So how do you welcome a person like me? How do you make space for a journey like mine? Well, I've come to think that maybe, just maybe, the minority gender experience is like the burning bush Moses saw. You know that story in Exodus chapter 3? This bush that is burning but not consumed. And Moses sees this strange sight and bothers to turn aside, and God speaks to him from it. Minority gender experience, like that burning bush, is a paradoxical tear in the fabric of ordinary reality that invites us to pay attention. Whether it is in our own experience or in the experience of the trans people who are in our lives and our communities, we are invited to pay attention to something that challenges deep and invisible assumptions about the way we thought the world works. And what do we find there? We find that we are loved, that we are infinitely, irrevocably, absolutely loved. Because if I can be loved in that part of myself that I felt most broken, most shameful, most unlovable and unredeemable, that part that I felt I had to hide from view, then I know that I am loved to the uttermost. And if I can wear that in public and others can love me there, even knowing how unlovable this aspect of my experience sometimes feels, then they too share in this inviolable economy of love. The tragedy of our moment is that too often when the world sees this burning bush, it doesn't stop to wonder. It doesn't stop to listen. It doesn't even pass by like vaguely troubled. Instead, it rushes to extinguish the flame, treating it as a threat to order. But what if we chose differently? What if we turned aside, paid attention, and welcomed one another, even across our deepest differences? I believe we would discover what I discovered, that grace abounds, that God's love meets us most profoundly in the very places we fear it cannot reach. Another image from the Christian scriptures that I've been turning over in my heart lately is Jesus' parable of the lost sheep. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them, he says. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep and find it? Well, actually, no. That seems like a terrible idea. Jesus completely reverses the logic of our majoritarian capitalist common sense here. Like, this is why we have like 99 sequels to movies coming out and like nothing new. We can't take a risk on something new and something strange. We've got to go with the formula. We've got to go with what works. In our world, we don't seek out the misfit sheep. If we're feeling magnanimous, we might tolerate it. But when we're feeling threatened, it makes a very convenient scapegoat. But what Jesus treats as common sense is an invitation to a different way of seeing, to consider that part of our soul that is weird and wounded as worthy of that pursuit, to leave aside what is commonplace, what is comfortable, and to tend to our neighbors who are excluded and marginalized. For me, this journey of coming to terms with my transness and coming to transition has become a kind of apprenticeship in that shepherding love, reintegrating the exiled parts of my soul and discovering the joy of fellowship with those on the margins. It can be that way for all of us, I think. The way that the margins serve and have always served as an invitation to those with power and privilege to seek out what others overlook, to gather up what was once disowned, to walk with wonder, barefoot among the mysteries, until wonder weaves us together into peace. So I've been sharing with you a little bit of my story, and you hear a little bit of my voice as a preacher. And I want to share a little as a practitioner and as a poet. That's where as I've been exiled from the pulpit, where my hyperlexia has focused. I've been writing a lot of poetry. It's been a lot of fun processing all of these kinds of emotions and experiences. So I've actually developed a whole poetic form, which I won't get into the mechanics of, but if you're curious, I love talking about it. This is a poem that I wrote the other morning, a good picture of my own ongoing process of looking to the margins, finding inspiration for theology in unlikely places. And I think I may have to write a poem later about dancing to Pink Pony Club in sacred space. It was one of those uncomfortable and unexpected experiences, like, oh, there's something here. I need to spend some time with this. But this poem is to the bikini barista who served me a large Americano and veggie breakfast burrito at 5:47 a.m. on October 17th on my way back from the Seattle airport. Based on a true story, if you didn't guess. The sky was the color of dishwater holiness, and I was carrying the ghost of a small, quiet conspiracy with friends that was not exactly platonic. We tried to burn the master's house with the master's lighter, but only singed our fingers. You, meanwhile, stood barely clothed and fully alive in a fluorescent dawn, a sacrament of flesh in a world that calls your labor scandal. I gave a small tip as an offering to the goddess of endurance, ashamed of my theology and my oversized hoodie. Steam curls in the night, prayer takes coffee without cream, the world wakes hungry. You didn't know that I was a priest in exile, a trans femme theologian of drive-through mysteries, a woman in chrysalis smothered by the sermon that was still stuck in her throat. You just smiled that practiced warmth taught by capitalism and cold weather. And yet, for a blink, the veil thinned. Our eyes met, and I saw the Christ who slouches in every body that the church forgets. Maybe you saw a tired queer aunt muttering into her Americano. The espresso hissed like Pentecost. No tongues of fire, just steam rising from the machine, and me thinking, liberation smells like burnt beans and mercy. Barefoot prophets sip as a strange hallelujah slips from the kiosk. If I ever write a theology worth trusting, it will begin with you, with labor under neon and the ache of cold skin against early wind, with joy that survives objectification and hope that survives the margins. We were both hustling love that morning, you for a wage, me for a word, each of us somehow sacred. Let the church learn her gospel from the women who make her coffee and the queers who drink it. Let the revolution start with small talk and caffeine, with tips and tenderness, with the master's tools repurposed into altars of laughter and warmth. When morning blushes, grace wears glitter and goosebumps. The cup overflows. O God of the early shift and the long journey, bless those who serve what they cannot afford to drink, and those who search for you in the lukewarm taste of their own fatigue. Teach us to see glory in the bodies the world discounts, and to find communion in the passing of a paper cup where your blood is still steaming and your love still burning on our tongues. Amen.
Thank you for your courage and your story. We have an ensemble going to sing, maybe? More singing. Fun.
Is the mic on? Yeah, okay. Sorry. If you save yourself for marriage, you're a bore. If you don't save yourself for marriage, you're a horrible person. If you won't have a drink, then you're a prude. But they'll call you a drunk as soon as you down the first one. If you don't lose the weight, then you're just fat. If you lose too much, then you're on crack. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. So you might as well just do whatever you want. So make lots of noise, kiss lots of boys, kiss lots of girls, kiss whoever you want to. When the straight and narrow gets a little too straight, just blow this joint or don't, and follow your arrow wherever it points. Yeah, follow your arrow wherever it points. If you come to Buff, you know that there's no hell. But if you're the first one in the front row, are you welcoming others? Can't win for losing, you'll just disappoint them. Just 'cause you can't beat them, don't mean you should join them. So make lots of noise, kiss lots of boys, kiss lots of girls, kiss whoever you want to. When the straight and narrow gets a little too straight, just blow this joint, or don't. And follow your arrow wherever it points. Yeah, follow your arrow wherever it points. Say what you feel, love who you love. You just get so many trips round the sun. Yeah, you only live once. So kiss lots of boys, make lots of noise, kiss lots of girls, kiss whoever you want to. With a straight and narrow gets a little too straight, just blow this joint, I would. Or follow your arrow wherever it points. Yeah, follow your arrow wherever it points.
Our benediction was written by Reverend Dr. Kimmy Floyd Reich. They embody the Nitsitapi Siksitka role of soul and breath, understood more deeply as manly-hearted woman, a gender-expansive identity with sacred responsibilities. It's called Beacons. Beloveds, we were never meant to hide in closets, and we were never meant to be spoken of in whispered corners by a world filled with others afraid of their own reflections. We are from the flame of Channing's truth, Olympia Brown's relentlessness, and Lou Alcott's defiance of societal expectations, in Thoreau's solitude of freedom of solitude. We are here, heirs of a theology that says love is love. The soul is not gendered, that covenants live in hearts, not courtrooms. Laws can be cruel and narrow, but our faith remains wide, widening still more until every child hears their pronouns in liturgies. And every parent of a trans child hears their entire congregation reflect back, "You are not alone," in the face of their fears. We have always been here, from pulpits to picket lines, from the ancestors you called heretics to our kitchen tables, where we sat with chosen families, speaking our truths into becoming real. This world may pass bans, overturn laws, rewrite constitutions, threaten us, but our marriages were holy before they were licensed, and our identities were sacred before we had names. Today, again, and every day, bless those coming out and those staying in. Bless the drag, bless the transitioning, bless the questioning, bless the kinfolk, bless our chosen families, and bless us. Because we have faced ourselves, loved ourselves, saw ourselves, and we declare we are beauty and goodness and unicorns with a bit of rainbow and a lot of heart. We gather now in the wake of their efforts to erase as a sign that we are not so easy to erase, and knowing that we are literally love becoming. We were never meant to hide. We were always meant to blaze.
As we extinguish the chalice, carry the flame as you go forward this week, and join us. It's going to be some very interesting shapes that will approximate as circles as we circle around for freedom.